Okay.
What are the Human Performance Laboratories?
The Human Performance Laboratories are 5 different spaces in Memorial Gym. One of them is this particular lab that we're in currently, which is the Applied Physiology Lab. In this particular lab, for example, we could have a student, an athlete, a client walk, run, sprint on the treadmill with a mask on their face that allows us to collect expired oxygen and carbon dioxide. On the big flat screen TV over here, the students or anyone around can see exactly what's going on. So for example, you could get their heart rate as it climbs, as it goes faster and higher, faster and higher. I usually ask people if they've seen Rocky IV, and in Rocky IV, Ivan Drago, the Russian boxer who was fighting Rocky, they had him going faster, higher, until he couldn't go anymore. So that was an example where that might have brought technology to the person watching the movie. Well, we actually have the ability to do that in our labs. Most recently, we did this with our baseball pitchers here at Louisiana Tech so that we could determine their fitness level. And then we were going to go to the field and then put a portable unit that they can wear on their back while they pitch in the bullpen, and then get that same volume of oxygen and carbon dioxide. And then based off of the max that you would get from the treadmill and the level of the VO2 that you would produce while you are actually exercising or pitching, we can train them somewhere in between that, so that hopefully the act of actual pitching is much easier, because we're training them to be more efficient with their utilization of their energy systems, such as carbohydrates and fats, for example. In addition to this particular piece of equipment in our lab, if you follow me over here, we have a biodex. The biodex is an isokinetic piece of equipment. So you can have someone seated, and again I want to make reference to Rocky IV. Ivan Drago was doing internal and external rotation at a modified 90-degree position. He also was doing a leg extension and a leg curl to show his quadriceps hamstring strength. Well, this piece of equipment can be used in a clinical situation. So if a football player, for example, has a knee injury, we could have them seated, do that leg extension and leg curl, and then ultimately we can find out how strong they are, how much force they can produce, the torque that's being produced at various speeds. And we also can dictate the range of motion based off of the injury. For the baseball pitchers that we recorded this past fall, we had them do an internal and external rotation at 90 degrees. We did that modified 90, and then we did a diagonal pattern D2 flexion extension. We also did elbow extension and flexion, so flexion extension. We did wrist flexion extension, and we did forearm pronation supination. All of those we believe would relate to the UCL, which is Tommy John surgery. The shoulder issues deal with rotator cuff injuries or labrum issues. So if we can identify weaknesses somewhere in their body, then we can recommend exercises that they do so that hopefully they become stronger. And then they should pitch either more consistently, not have any rehab issues or injuries, and then hopefully be able to pitch as often as they can and at the level that they desire. So hopefully we can use that to follow an athlete along and track them. So if a freshman was here, then their sophomore year, their junior year, their senior year, we can see if they get stronger, if they get weaker. If they have an injury, we can actually have them put back on the device after they've gone through their rehab to see if they're actually at the point at which they were in the fall when they actually started, when they weren't hurt. So now we can actually tell them, you don't need to be back on the field yet because maybe you're at too low of a strength ratio to what you were in the fall. So let's continue to do your rehab, and then once you get to a certain percentage, now we can go back out on the field or go through that throwing program or whatever else the athletic trainer or the medical staff is actually recommending to them. Also in this lab, we have areas where we can assess body composition. And so there's a device called the InBody where you can actually stand on it with your bare feet, hold the device in your hands, and after 60 seconds, it will tell you your percent body fat and your lean muscle mass. Additionally, it'll tell you the intra and extracellular water, which means how dehydrated or not dehydrated are you. Again, for the athlete, this could be really important because if you're outside in the hot, humid southeast region and you're going to be playing with low water, that could be a reason for heat-related illnesses. And if you are interested in the topic, there's something called rhabdomyolysis, where the internal organs actually shut down. And I will say, unfortunately, over the last 10 years, 30 football players during practices have actually died. Not just because of those only issues that I mentioned, but that is, in my opinion, more than what should be going on. So if we use sports science and we use technology to help us assess athletes, then maybe we could reduce those challenges that these athletes or anybody else might be having. Over here to my right, there are stationary bikes. And so if somebody can't do a VO2 max test, which takes them to their limit, we can actually put a polar heart rate monitor on them, have them ride the bike, have the resistance on the bike set that progressively gets a little bit more challenging, and as their heart rate goes up, we can estimate their VO2. So this is a sub-maximal test that a child could do, a college student could do, somebody who is older could do, without having the risk of potentially taking them too far. And if we had someone who might be older or who had some cardiac issues, we don't want to cause a myocardial infarction or a heart attack.
Wonderful. So this is the Applied Physiology Lab. So tell us about the other labs in the Memorial Gym.
Absolutely. So we have downstairs, we have the Sport and Movement Science Laboratory that was for the longest time where the powerlifting team worked out when Dr. Billy Jack Talton was the department chair here. Well, that 2,000 square foot space has now been renovated. We now have a 12 camera motion capture system downstairs. We have 2 research grade force plates that allow us to get peak power and rate of force development when they walk, when they run, when they jump. We also have a Rapsodo device, and the Rapsodo, if you like the sport of baseball and pitching, and you watch ESPN, for example, we can record now the spin rate, the spin efficiency, the trajectory of the ball, the velocity of the ball, the vertical angle, the horizontal angle of the pitch, and then we can actually see if the pitch was in the strike zone or not. And then we can give immediate feedback to the pitcher and the pitching coach, and now they can work on potentially changing maybe the grip, and maybe they put a little bit more pressure on their middle finger to throw that curveball or slider. We also, with the cameras, can identify what was the position of their wrist or their fingers on the ball while they were throwing. With the motion capture system, we put reflective markers on their joint segments, and now we can actually calculate the forces that are on the shoulder, on the elbow, or anywhere else in their body. In addition to the sport of baseball, it could be on anybody. So if you watch how they make video games and they put the reflective markers, you can see them shooting their jump shot or playing the game. If you like watching the trailers of movies and you say, how did Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible do that unbelievable thing? Well, they had a green screen behind him, they had the black suit on him with the reflective markers, and they could put him in a situation that they could ultimately put him into the movie and make it look real. So you can use it for all types of things like that. However, that's not how we are using it. We're using it to assess human movement and sport movement. Also downstairs, we have computers for students so that when they actually can use their cell phones, they can video a movement and then upload it on the FireWire to the hard drive, and then they can assess a golf swing, a bat swing, or any movement, and then they can do some really simple biomechanical analysis, so it's movement and what's going on. If somebody wanted to be in the physical therapy world and they wanted to know if there was an ankle, knee, or hip issue, they could walk on a treadmill. So Dr. Chow, our biomechanist, will have them walk on a treadmill, have them walk on force plates, and they'll look at the gait, which is the pattern at which they walk or run in either of those situations. And now they can identify, is it within normal ranges or is it outside of it? If it's outside of those ranges, then guess what? They might have an injury. Well, that's probably why they're seeing us, because they do have an injury. So how can we change that? What can we do to change their pattern of their walking? Could we recommend a shoe that would be different or a shoe not to wear? So just for example, if a woman happens to be wearing high heels all day long and goes upstairs, all of a sudden how she makes contact with the ground or stairs could put more force or pressure on her ankle, on her knee, on her hip, on her low back, and all of a sudden what would we say? Hey, don't wear those all day. Maybe just wear them part of the day or when you're in that professional situation. But other times, maybe wear a flat or a gym shoe that allows you to have much less stress on those joints and then hopefully allows them to be pain-free. In addition to that, we have a motor learning lab next door, and in that space we can do choice reaction time. So we can actually have a device where they can see a light's sensors, and then they have to react to it as quickly as they can. In addition to that, there's balance and stability issues. So we have a senior adult fitness program here that has around 240 individuals in it, and we do tests with them for balance and stability, because as we age, if we get weaker and we can't function in everyday society, our program allows them to be tested and monitored, and then we have them go through exercise programs either in the gym, at the pool, or at the Lambright. We also have a sport pedagogy lab where Dr. Jean Chen, who works with all the schools here in town, can have young students come in here, and then our students from Louisiana Tech and Kinesiology work with them. So in particular, we have a homeschool program for physical education. So on a weekly basis, once or twice a week, depending on the quarter, those homeschool students come into our gym. Our Louisiana Tech students work with them and put them through a physical education program. So everybody benefits. And then finally, I want to tell you all that next fall, 2020, we should have a new lab called the Minds in Motion Lab. That will be for sport and exercise psychology. So Dr. Jordan Blazo, Dr. Drew Parks are going to be two instrumental professors that are going to have that entire new lab space that will be dedicated to their area of expertise. We believe that should be a great area for potential grant funding and then potential donors who might want to be involved in some capacity to really make that lab the most cutting edge lab in the Southeast and possibly even the country. Because if you actually Google it, you'll find out that there are not a lot of programs like that around the country.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for telling us all about what exactly the Human Performance Laboratories are within the Department of Kinesiology. But now we're just curious, so who is Dr. David Szymanski?
Well, I usually tell students at the very first class they have with me a little bit about my background. So my father was a percussionist, he was a musician, played the drums and xylophones and other things. My mother was an artist. My first degree is actually in fine art, drawing and painting. If you were to come to my house, you'd find out that there's probably 70 pieces of artwork on the walls, there's sculptures and everything. So I'm a little bit Zen-like, I suppose. I'm a Renaissance man, I would like to tell you. I appreciate all things that are dealing with the world and what surrounds us. I was also a collegiate baseball player in hopes of being a professional baseball player. When that didn't happen, I did work downtown Chicago for a while, working in an art agency where we did advertisements for companies from around the country and around the world. But ultimately, I didn't like that environment, and I decided to go back to school. I went back to school and got a second degree in kinesiology. I got a master's degree in physical education with an emphasis in sports management, and I was then coaching for 4 years. But as I was coaching, I learned all this science about how to enhance performance for a baseball player with overweighted bats and underweighted bats, overweighted and underweighted baseballs. Well, that led me to talk to other physiologists saying, hey, how can I do this professionally? And they said to me, go get your PhD. So after another year of investigating schools, I ultimately started my PhD. I have a PhD in exercise physiology, and I've been working with baseball athletes for the last 20, 25 years, and coaching, teaching, research, get students involved, get the teams involved, so that we can really embrace what's currently going on. So if you are an enthusiast for baseball world, you now know that they're hiring sports scientists, and they want to collect all this information. So cybermetrics you might be familiar with, Moneyball, which was a movie they made about the book that was written about Billy Beane, the general manager of the Oakland A's. So if you take their statistics, I think if you take their scientific physiological information, kind of like the NFL Combine has been doing for years, then now you can actually help predict potentially who's going to be a better baseball player, and then who are you going to give all that money to, because the dollars that are in professional sports today are really huge. Other than that, I am a husband. My wife works in our department. She is my right-hand person. If you were to look at most of my research publications, she would be on every single one of them because she's helped me with all of it. I am a father of 2 boys. Both of them, as you might imagine now, are baseball players. One is a sophomore, one is a freshman. And literally all the things that I do professionally, I've been doing with them since they were probably 7 years of age. And so if you would walk by my house, you know there's a batting cage. We're hitting all the time. We're throwing all the time. I'm using this data and research type of tools to help them. And then I show them what they're doing right, and I show them what they could improve on. And once they see that now, they have a visual image in their head that I never had when I was a player. And now they know what their swing looks like when it's good, and they know what they have to do to correct it so that maybe they can be more consistent. Other than that, I would say that I'm somewhat of a perfectionist. If you ask the students or other people who might know me, I'm always trying to be as excellent as I can be. I love to give movie analogies. I think I'm funny. I think sometimes the students may not because they don't always watch the movies that I see, because I am now getting a little bit older. However, some students have now made some posters. How many movie quotes has Dr. Szymanski given? This past summer, I was over 100 movie quotes and it is now being tallied all the time, and so that's something I'll say is somewhat unique. Other than that, I just try to be involved. I try to be a good person, try to help people learn and live how to be someone in the kinesiology world. So I tell them, if I'm not buying what I'm selling, then you shouldn't listen to a word I have to say.
Wow, so you are a scientist, an artist, a movie buff, a husband, a father, and you found such a great niche where you can take your personal passions and turn it into your profession, and that is an incredible gift that you have. So as a movie buff, I guess my question for you is, what's the last movie you saw in the theater?
In the theater, I just saw 1917.
And how was it?
I thought it was really great. Again, if you like movies, this was one where they did a continual following of the two individuals that were going from their point of starting into, we'll say, the enemy lines, and then how they had to go find a brother and try to help him, and then maybe return safely. And I took my two boys there to go see it. My wife was actually coaching volleyball, so our family's always involved in sports. But it was really unique movie, and boys loved it as well.
Okay, next movie question. Who would play you in the movie of your life?
Oh my goodness.
You get to cast. You get to cast
I
whoever
get to
you want.
cast. So who would play me in a movie? Man, if I was younger, I might say The Rock, but he'd have to have hair, obviously, or I'd have to shave my hair. Sometimes people tell me that some of my expressions or the way I might lift my eyebrow might be something like that. But other than that, man, I guess I'd have to think about that one a little bit more as to who would play me.
The Rock is a great answer.
Yeah. And he has a great work ethic too. So he's doing things now with he's training his body, and he's trying to live a life that's really healthy and clean, and really trying to advocate for health and fitness.
Absolutely. Great choice. Well, it was great to speak with you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.